Hi, and welcome back to Lead with Bubba Scott. Today, I'm joined by my good friend and Naval Academy classmate, Isaac Seals. Isaac is a former Marine officer whose career took him from leading platoons of amphibious armored vehicles to the parade field with the greatest drill team in the world, to escorting dignitaries at the White House. Isaac's charisma, discipline, unstoppable drive, and great sense of humor have always been the hallmarks of his leadership style. We'll talk about balancing priorities as a Division I athlete, his truly unique and challenging path to becoming a Marine Corps officer, and some hilarious stories about his time at the White House. Most importantly, we get into what it means to build a meaningful life after service, how to find purpose following a career transition, and why leaders should never forget to bring who they are to the table. This was a super fun and instructive conversation with a great friend. Let's get it. Isaac Seals, welcome to the show. How we doing?
Good, Bubba. Good. Thanks for having me on, brother.
Absolutely stoked to have you on. Can't wait to get into this.
Honestly, I'm just happy to be here. The fact that you called me up and say, "Hey, ask you want to be on the show," I was like, "Me? Leave with Bubba? Okay, let's do it."
No, absolutely. Isaac, with that, let's get right after it. Really, we know you went to the academy. We know you're a Marine officer, and we know what you're doing now. What I want to know is, where did it all begin? Where are you from? What was growing up like? And ultimately, what drove you to service?
Yeah, man. So it all began in Decatur, Georgia, which is a small city right outside, right on the Atlanta line. I was in a two-parent home, sister, white picket fence, dog, kind of like a little American dream, if you will. Dad, teacher, coach. And my parents really, really, they loved the hell out of me. And I know they did because they pushed me really hard. As far as high school life, I kind of want to say I was a little bit of a nerd, jock mixed together. I think I got invited to maybe one or two parties throughout the entirety of my high school career, which is, I'm not sure if that's a reflection on me or not, or just, being busy, but we'll take it as a reflection of being busy for the ego. But grew up playing football, lacrosse. And my parents told me before even anything that they were not going to pay for me to go to college. They told me that 10th grade year, and it was kind of like one of those moments where it's like, okay, what am I going to do? But they told me they invest in my youth. And so they said, you can do anything you want, anything you want. We're building a resume before you go to college because you're going to get into college for free. And so naturally started building the resume. I started working at the Zoo Atlanta, have a big time, closeted passion for animals that nobody really knows about, but I have this huge passion for animals. So I started volunteering at the zoo, got 727 hours of volunteer time during high school, and was on top of that playing football, playing lacrosse, and really just trying to build that resume up to try to get somewhere.
Yeah, that's incredible. And it's there's a lot to pick at there. Real quick, what's your favorite animal at the zoo? I just got to ask.
Oh man, I am very impartial to an African wild dog. If I see an African wild dog, I will sit down, stare at the screen like a kid with an iPad, just watching everything. And it's mainly because they're hunting ratio and the way they take care of each other. It's highly impressive, especially for their stature and size of African predators, which is obviously going into nerd mode. You see me reverting back a little bit.
No, it's good. It's good. I actually think that's a great choice. A unique choice, and I'm sure we could do an entire episode on what we could learn about leadership and teamwork from the African wild dog. But so. What is pretty impressive about that, beyond just your volunteerism and of course your love of animals, is that connection you had with your folks who clearly loved you and who also. It's interesting when you first said that they told you in 10th grade they weren't going to pay for your college. That seems a little harsh. But it's interesting to see how that actually could have been used as a motivating factor, right? And they gave you the reason why they were doing it to kind of light that fire. Did you feel like that helped propel you to get where you were going?
100%. And to be completely fair, I didn't even see it as resentment. It was okay, yeah, I do have the ability to be able to do it. There are scholarships out there, kind of everybody kind of has this route where to go to college, get a good job, all these different things. And it's well, how do you get there? And it wasn't just this one door I could go through. It was these multiple avenues. I get an academic scholarship? Do I go for some sort of sports scholarship into college? And I wanted to shoot for sports because I love lacrosse and I love football. But I didn't know which way to go. And they kind of opened these doors for me to help build my resume to like put more things. So when I started applying to colleges, like I think I applied to like 11 colleges, got
Oh,
into
wow.
all 11. And it was just like one of those, is like, which one do you want to go to now? It's which one is going to give you the most money is what really was, it was the same. um, but, then one that obviously stuck out to me was the Naval Academy, you know, and that one was like my dad put his, I don't want to say his foot on my neck for that, but he was like, you have to be smart to get in there. And I was like, okay, I got it. He's like, no, you have to be smart to get in there. So, okay, got it.
Yeah. So you're saying when you were having the conversations about which schools, he was just very clear that that would be a very challenging one to make sure that you understood what you were getting yourself into when you said, I want to go to the Naval Academy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. He would, I mean, like, it was playful, soft threats like, hey, if you don't get an A in biology, you're not going to make it to the Naval Academy. Hey, if you don't bring up, your sports, or like if you're not this team captain this year, you might not make it to the Naval Academy. And it's like, they always like soft challenges that are in the back of your mind. Like, okay, I guess I have to do this, or what I have to do in order to get there. What steps are needed to take? What goals do I need to hit in order to hit these milestones?
Yeah, dude, absolutely. I mean, your folks sound like they could write a book on, incentives and psychoanalysis and how to, because that, obviously some people that wouldn't work with them, you know what I mean? Like those soft challenges, but it's exciting to hear that that's how I mean, it makes a lot of sense the way that you stepped up to that challenge. And I think knowing you, it makes sense why you wanted to go to the academy. And you had those examples from your folks and those challenges, and you chose, a place that is widely regarded as challenging. I certainly was very challenged when I was there. I would love to talk about your time there. We've had some folks on the show, actually quite a few who are classmates of ours or who are professors at the academy. But one perspective we have not heard has been, a lot of our listeners know kind of the general experience at the academy. What they have not heard is what it was like to balance all of the things of being a midshipman, the academics, the PT, the military development, leadership development, with Division I athletics. So that's not something we've talked about. Can you talk about your journey on the track team? What were your events? What was that like for you? And how did that shape your experience at school?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So funny enough, I didn't come into the academy being a track runner at all. I ran track at middle school. And I actually played lacrosse growing up for 9 years, from 4th grade all the way to 12th grade, I guess. I mean, that's not 9, it's 8 years. But then I did a year at NAPS as well. That NAPS
What
year.
What is NAPS, Isaac?
So that's the Naval Academy Prep School. So my Congressman John Lewis, one of the civil rights leaders down in Alabama, yeah, he gave me a nomination, but he said, my nomination, I've already used all of them up for this year. So what I can do for you is I can send you the NAPS, and that'll be a good year for you. You can grow academically, you can grow in sports, and obviously I bid at it. Went to NAPS for a year. NAPS was a little bit like Lord of the Flies, but we survived, thank God. And ended up going to the academy, started trying out for the lacrosse team, and they didn't make it. And I could blame it for so many other factors. It was a new coach coming in. He cut the team down from an 80-man roster to a 45-man roster.
Oh,
Most
wow.
of the freshmen, a lot of my classmates, even guys who were recruited, because I wasn't recruited, I was a preferred walk-on coming from NAPS. They didn't even make a team. And so I called my dad, and I was distraught. This is the sport I love. It's the sport I poured most of my effort into. I was a team captain. I was first team All-State, and it was just like, this is who I am. And I called my dad, and I go, hey, Dad, I got cut from the lacrosse team. He goes, oh, dang. So what sport are you going to play now? And I was like, it's a D1 school. He goes, no, what sport are you going to play? And I was like, I guess I'll run track. And so another soft challenge. But he was like, okay, yeah, what are you going to do now? And it was like, I mean, my plan was just kind of sulk, not really give up on sports, just being academic. And no, you're going to play a sport. You have the abilities. Go and do it. So I ended up walking onto the track team. And it was hard. I got injured a lot. I was by no means a good track runner. I was fast enough to make the team, and fast enough to show up for practice, and fast enough to be there for all 4 years and letter, and just be a part of the team, which was, I will always be thankful for that. But it was hard because conversely, my freshman year, I tried to play club lacrosse and I would go from track practice to club lacrosse practice, and then have like maybe an hour for all of my academics. And my body started failing and my academics started failing. I had to make a choice, and I ended up cutting club lacrosse out of that just because I literally couldn't take it anymore. On top of being a freshman at the Naval Academy, where I don't want to call it being hazed, but there's definitely some like external pressure there from,
I think we call that good training, Isaac.
Yes, exactly. I know. Yes, you're exactly right.
And hey, I'll just make a quick aside too, for the audience, if they're not familiar with the kind of landscape of Division I lacrosse, but the Naval Academy's team, it's one of the teams at the Naval Academy that truly is exceptional. So, getting cut from that, first of all, having the dream of playing there is massive, but then, getting cut from that I would say it should be a little bit less of a big deal because it's such a good team. It's one of the top teams every year in the country, but obviously I can see how that would be devastating. And I think we're going to talk about this later too, but I'm really pretty interested in when we allow our work or one of our passions to become a part of our identity and what it's like when you step away from that. Obviously a major theme with military veterans, and we're going to circle back to that later. But diving back in, you didn't make the lacrosse team. You're on the track team. You're not a distance runner. You're running the 400 meters, a dash kind of guy. And I know that you had some pretty good friends from the team. Can you talk a little bit about the camaraderie you got from the track team and what impact that had on your ability to make it through the academy?
Honestly, being on the track team changed my life. Being on the track team changed my life. It's where I found my actual best friends in life. Two that stand out are obviously Rico and JD.
We're going to talk about them.
Yeah, they're great, phenomenal humans. But it allowed me to be in a space where I felt like I was a part of a team, and being a part of a team changes your brain chemistry. It's not just about you. You learn how to work with people. You know how to compete against people in a healthy way. You know how to encourage people. You see people when they're down. You have very interpersonal connections with people. You literally shower people having like just talks about life, You learn people's parents' birthdays. It changes who you are because you understand that life isn't just this one little microcosm that you live in, but everybody's interacting with each other and everybody goes through the same things you do. And they might even bring something to the table that you don't understand, but you can actually learn from them with, Yeah. And you learn to accept people for who they are.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I also think particularly in track, because it's not quite as, I don't know, obviously people derive great joy from competition in athletics and in track and field events, but it's not the fluidity that you get in a lacrosse game, right? Where you kind of get in that flow state, or if you do, it's a shorter duration, right? Mm-hmm. But there's that aspect of the grind of track. Again, I brought this up in the last episode, but my little sister was a stud captain of the track team at Villanova, and just seeing the level of work that she put in and what was required is crazy. And having that grind with the dudes and girls side by side next to you, I think is really formative and definitely creates that incredible, team camaraderie. And I think, not a bad lesson for someone who is going to go, drive AAVs in the Marine Corps.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you have to be able to trust people to do their job. That's one of the main things. And I'm sure we'll get into that later on as far as being an officer, but trusting somebody to perform and do their job on an individual basis is what kind of track is all the way about. There are a couple of relays here and there, and you're competing against your teammates, but it's really on you as an individual to focus in on your craft. You're not necessarily worried about everybody else. One thing you can do is you can push each other. It's I'm running hard, so you better be right there next to me. Hey, I'm getting up early. I'm going to rehab. You better be right there next to me. I'm taking care of my body. I'm in the weight room. I'm pushing. You better be right there next to me. But this conversely, like you're also joking along the way and you're having fun along the way with it too.
Yeah. So I've got two main questions about that. One, so we talked about what I'm sure at the time felt like a failure where you didn't make the lacrosse team, right? And that was such a big goal for you. But on the other side of that too, there's this interesting dynamic where you go from being the guy on the high school lacrosse team, like the biggest stud, right? And then you go to NAFS where you crushed it as well as a preferred walk-on. And then, you have that setback where you don't make the lacrosse team, you step onto the track team, but now you're in a completely different role, right? Like you're no longer the guy who's a stud. You're no longer the clear, far and away leader. What was that like for you coping with that transition from being the top guy to one of the, middle of the pack?
I think it hit you harder than you actually want to realize. You're learning something new. On top of that, you're competing against people who have done this all their lives, that got recruited for it, that are, they were the top guys in their room, and they see this guy who's never done this sport before, and it's like, what are you doing here? The way that I was able to get through that, and this is the way that I handle a lot of situations, it's just by being there for people, making friends, being available, helping out. I didn't want to, if I wasn't running into me, some things I didn't want to do was rake a pit, but what I was going to do out there and to support my team is rake a pit. I ended up getting hurt. I think my junior year, they made me into the announcer for some of the meets, which is absolutely insane. But being there for people and being a part of the team is what allowed me to build my equity in the team. Because if I didn't have that, if I was just this cocky guy that said, well, I should be here, I'm fast enough, no, everybody would have pushed me away, talked to the coach, get the guy out of here. No, you want somebody who is able to say, no matter what level you're at, even if you're at the bottom, even if you're at the top, you're on the team, and that's what matters.
Yeah, dude, that's so awesome. Just investing. It's, when you're committed to the team, when you're committed to the cause, and you can find, you may not be the number one guy, but you can find ways to positively contribute. I mean, raking the pit, right? It's got to be done. Like these things have to be done. And that's a great lesson to find opportunities to contribute even when you're not, the top guy in a situation. The other thing that I want to touch on there is that you talked about leaning on your teammates and really investing in them. And so we talked about JD and Rico, and I'm going to bring up, and we're going to drop some links. We're going to drop some URLs in the comments here, but we have some legendary videography that went on in our time at the Academy. You guys made a lot of hilarious videos that when I was at the basic school in the Marines, some guys from like UNC Chapel Hill were telling me about, and they were like, oh, Isaac Seals? I'm like, yeah, I know Isaac Seals. He doesn't like me, but I know him.
That's not true. That's not true.
But yeah, so can you talk about what it was like to do some of those videos? And yeah, I mean, I rewatched a bunch of them last night. So I think I did a bad job framing that, but basically you guys made a bunch of spoof videos about the Academy that were hilarious. What was that like doing that? And as an outlet for creativity and fun at a place that was so rigid and so intense and uptight, what was that like for you?
I mean, I got my best friends out of it. I got the people that I go see the most in life, the people I travel with, the people whose kids I love seeing. That's what the output is right now. But during that time, I'll be honest with you, we didn't think it was going to be anything. What we were doing was, when you're, this, but just for the audience, when you're a youngster at the Naval Academy, you don't have, some Saturdays off. You don't have Friday nights off. You don't have Sundays off. And you're just sitting there like, what do we do? You're connecting with your people. You're having fun. But JD pulled Rico and I together and goes, hey, let's make a video about boxing,
Oh, so good.
Yeah, that was the first one we ever did. And we were just making fun of the things that we all go through, the day-to-day life things that, the small isms, if you will, that are just like, why did that happen? I can't believe I just got my ass beat. Now I have to go to chemistry, and like, you have to fight somebody who's maybe twice your size, or, who's more athletically inclined, and they don't pair you up correctly. Or there's just a struggle of changing and being like in a highly physical activity and then being in a highly like intellectual activity right afterwards. But we just were having fun with it. We were just hanging out with the boys on a Friday night. Let's film this. Let's make it funny, and then throw it up on our Facebook, because at the time frame, Facebook was the premier app or the premier social media site. And it took off, and we didn't expect it to do that. It wasn't like, hey, let's get popular. Let's make a viral video. It was hey, I just want to hang out with my friends right now, and I want to see them, and I want to be around them. So let's do something that's a little bit of an outlet for all three of us.
Yeah. So I was looking at some of the videos. Some of them are, multiple 100,000 views. Some of them are over 1 million, which is crazy to think about. But it made me think about this. I took this awesome class at Wharton this past year, and it was about the systematic approach to generating creative ideas. Mm-hmm. And we have this idea that, people who are creative are free spirited and they have no constraints and they can just flow anywhere. But actually, when you're approaching creativity from a professionalized perspective, or you're trying to create a system that helps generate creativity, you actually increase the constraints. And the number of constraints that you have actually helps increase the creativity because it limits the avenues for you to into which you can flow that creativity. So when I think about that in the context of the Naval Academy, what you just described, we didn't have Fridays off, right? Like you couldn't leave campus.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? There were all these rules. You had to follow the rules. So midshipmen are incredibly creative in ways to have fun, and that certainly reverberates throughout the rest of the military, right? Like that's why people in the military are so tight, because you endure these like very challenging things with a ton of constraints and a ton of intense pressures, and you find ways to generate fun and generate creative ideas. And I'll just shout out Professor Gideon Navi who taught that course, which was really eye-opening, and definitely makes a lot of sense with what you guys were doing. I encourage for anyone listening to the podcast, I'll drop the links, and highly encourage you to see Isaac play his character Senor Cialis, who's absolutely hilarious. So thanks so much for breaking that down. And so I want to talk about, we talked about this camaraderie, the teamwork, the hard work of, both the whole academy experience, but then also the D1 experience. And then you were drawn to the Marine Corps, which, anybody who's at the school, all respect and love to the Navy, tons of great Navy officers and senior enlisted who were there. But there was something about the Spartan lifestyle of the Marines that really drew us to it. So I'd love to hear your perspective on, you could have done anything there. You were very successful at school. Why did you choose the Marine Corps?
Brother, I'll be honest. Like, I have the most interesting story about how I got Marine Corps. I was drawn to it. To answer this question first, I was drawn to it because it's just, you look at your attributes, you look at who you are, what do you want to be, like what interests you. I love being outside. I love doing physical activities. I love being around like-minded individuals who want to do those things as well. I have a drive and desire to compete with people. And naturally the inclination was just go straight towards Marine Corps. It spoke to me. You think about the tenets, you think about, honor, courage, commitment. You're sitting all those things mean something to me, so why would I not join something or a group of people that wants to be the best, that are striving for perfection, that understand professionalism, that understand, being in a fight. And I was like, yeah, I want to do that. But during Prochamid, funny story, my grandfather died and he was a Marine in Vietnam. And on his deathbed, he told my family that he didn't want me to become a Marine because of the racism he ensued while he was in the Marine Corps.
Oh, wow.
And so that rocked my world. I mean, obviously I went to his funeral and like everybody in the family was like, yeah, you can't become a Marine. It's not his final wish, And it's like, okay, yeah, I guess I'm not going to do that. And what do you do? Is what I spent my entire time at the academy wanting to do. What do you do? I was planning to go surface warfare, and not anything bad against that, but it wasn't me. One of my surface warfare crews nobody corrected me, got to do anything I wanted. It was great, from that perspective, was partying all the time. Nobody checked on me except for one Marine gunnery sergeant named Gunnery Sergeant Edward Diaz. He looked at me and he goes, "What are you doing, man?" I was like, "What?" I had holes in my coveralls, walking down the hallway, I had wristbands on for the bars I was going to. He's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "You could just diddy bop around the hallway, do whatever you want. If you were under my wing, I'd make sure you were squared away. I'd make sure you were a leader." And I was like, "What?" He goes, "Show me the baby." Wrote it on a napkin, have it in my closet still right now. Show me the baby. I don't care about the screaming, the holler, or anything like that. Show me the result or the product of the thing you want in life. And that's what he meant by show me the baby. And I was like, okay, cool. So got back to school, hadn't done Marine training, didn't do Leatherneck, didn't do MADTAV, hadn't joined Simplify Society, hadn't done anything. And I was still kind of lost. And I was like, I guess I'm still going slow. And so Major Lake, I'm sure you remember him, pilot, Huey pilot, I believe Huey pilot.
Huge stud. That guy's an impressive. Like you just see him and you're like, holy cow! I'll sign up for the Marine Corps right now.
His calves were the size of my head. It was insane. And he brought my entire company in, and he goes, if anybody, he's talking to us about the Marine Corps, all these different things, and he goes, hey, if anybody wants to join the Marine Corps out right now, without having done it, come talk to me. Looked at all of us, kind of stopped at me, looked at all of us again, talked to me, looked at all of us. I'm like, he's talking to me. So didn't go down and see him. My roommate, Ryan Garvey, Cobra pilot, he goes, we get back to our room, he goes, I was talking to you. Trip Hiller, C-130 pilot, Marine, goes, yeah, Isaac, he was talking to you. Go down and see him right now.
Wow.
So go down, and it was
Trip
great.
Hiller, also a great guy, yeah.
Oh, another beautiful human. But go down to see Major Lake, and he goes, all right, I was hoping you'd come see me, Isaac. I was definitely talking to you. He goes, how about this? I know you're a good human. I know you're a good person. You're a good midshipman. I see you try hard. You do the right thing. You know, one of those like motivation, I feel good about myself moments. He goes, this is what I need. O course, E course, PFT, CFT, all perfect scores this week. And I was like, oh naturally, I was like, what? What did you say? He goes, O course, E course, PFT, CFT, all the Marine Corps standards. Get perfect on them. I'll give you a recommendation with confidence. I was like, oh, okay. So what did I do? I had to do it. I was in the height of track season, which obviously helped out. Went through every single one of them, got perfect scores on every single one of them, even got lost on the E course. Was like hearing, I heard people say, Isaac, sick, in like the distance. Didn't even know my name by the end of it because it was a 95-degree day in Quantico, Virginia.
Oh my God. That's good training.
Yeah. And he goes, okay, next thing that's happened, talk to every single Marine on the yard. I talked to every single Marine on the yard. They kind of shunned me. And it was like asking questions, you know, made sure I spoke to every single person. And it's the last thing you need to do is you need to schedule a meeting and talk to senior Marine of the yard, Colonel Montanus at the time. I was okay. So I emailed him, no response. Emailed again, no response. Called the office, like, he's busy. So finally one day I was like, I have an off period. I'm going to go see him because this is what I want to do. And if I don't take it upon myself to do it, nobody else is going to do it for me. And this is my dream. And I've already started this process. And I've already started it late at that. And so it was a thundery day. I remember this. The rain was hitting the windows. It was storming everything. And I waited for basically I believe our periods were 55 minutes long. I think I waited for 45 minutes outside his office. His secretary finally came out and says, Isaac, he's ready to see you. Came in. He was standing up, facing the window, watching the rain with his hands on his hips and goes, first class SEALs. I was wondering if you had the balls to come see me.
Oh my gosh! Wow!
And it was like one of those, one of those moments. And so I was like, he was like one of those moments. He goes, okay, you know that. He talked to me, read this book, read these articles, and then we're gonna board you, and that board's not gonna be easy. So that board was nothing but, and I got to the board, nothing but gunnery sergeants and above and majors and above, and it was frightening. I don't think I've ever been so frightening in my entire life. They picked me apart. They absolutely picked me apart. It was scary, man. I'm not gonna lie. I cried. I have no shame in saying I cried during that. They talked about my grandfather. They talked about my grades. They talked about everything. They even told me they didn't think I had the intellectual ability to perform a TBS, and like they were putting me down.
Oh
and
my
so
gosh.
The final thing, the straw that I think was really the real kicker there was I got pulled in, and it was Major Martinez, and he looks at me and he goes, hey, midshipman SEALs, pretend you're a midshipman that didn't go to Leatherneck or MAGTAV and wants to go to Marine Corps. Hey, that's actually who you are. You didn't go to Leatherneck or MAGTAV, and you want to be a Marine. Now, pretend I'm a midshipman who did go to Leatherneck or MAGTAV, and I want to be a Marine. Now, say you get Marine Corps, and they say I don't. And say I walk up to you and say, hey, man, how did you get Marine Corps, and I didn't? And I looked at him, and at this point, I was like, I was bubbling, I was fuming, I was sad, I was angry. And I looked at him and I said, well, obviously they saw something in me they didn't see in you. And every single Marine in that would lean back, just jotting back and forth. And I said, but obviously, good luck out there. I'm sure this fleet's going to love it. This, that, and the other. I said, midshipman SEALs, you're dismissed.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't hear from them at all whatsoever for it was like a couple of months because that was in the beginning of the school year. I think we got service selected like October time frame, maybe.
Yeah.
And one of the happiest moments of my life, and one of the reasons I'm so proud to be a Marine, is because I didn't know what I was going to get on service selection. I was one of those guys that's just like, I didn't do the work. I was sitting there like, what's happening here? Isaac Seals, Marine ground, tears down the face, entire company cheering. Everybody's happy for you. Sister's waiting outside because she was there too with a Marine Corps ground, with a Marine Corps shirt. And yeah, that's my story about how I got there, man.
Dude, wow, that is so crazy, and definitely one of the better journeys to becoming a Marine officer that I've heard. There's so much to peel back there. The thing that stands out being your level of commitment and the reasons for your delay making sense, and then your willingness to actually follow through on it. But also, I'm deeply impressed, I was perennially impressed by the Marines at the Academy, and for me, that's what drew me was really, you see the Marines on the yard, and you're like, I want to be like them. Danny Martinez, a guy you just mentioned, that's like one of the main reasons why I wanted to be a Marine, was because of that guy. That's why I wanted to be a Marine pilot. I had a ton of Marine mentors, ton of officers and senior enlisted that I looked up to, but Danny Martinez was really the guy that made me want to be a pilot. And that's so intense that he's the guy who delivered that to you. But it's also what I was saying is, it impresses me about the Marines on the yard because they obviously did see something in you, and you went on to be a great Marine officer, and they found a maneuver mindset to figure out a way to put you through a ringer that arguably was as challenging, if not more, than going to one of the traditional selection avenues. Having to do all those events in 1 week is crazy from a physical perspective. And then not to mention doing a board. Nobody was doing a Marine board at the time. So tons of respect for you, tons of respect for them. And yeah, dude, we should definitely, I think we're going to have to do a second episode or something at some point to talk about what your experience was in comparison to what your grandfather's wish was. Because I'm sure there's a lot to uncover there, but we'll save that for now. I want to talk about your, briefly your entry to the Marine Corps, your path, what you did, and then ultimately I really want to dive into some of your special billets that are pretty unique. That you're the only guy I know who's done some of these things. So, what was your military occupational specialty, and how did you spend your first few years in the Marines?
Yeah, so I was an Assault Amphibian officer. I did that for a couple of years out in Camp Lejeune. Great time there. I think that was from 2016 up until 2019. 2019, I had the opportunity to go up to 8th and I. Funny enough, let's
pause real quick.
Okay.
What is the Assault Amphibious Officer, and what do they do?
So those are the Gator Marines. Those are the Yassers right there.
Yeah.
Basically, an amphibious assault officer has a platoon of around 14 26-ton combat vehicles called an AAV. Those AAVs are equipped with a 50 cal machine gun. On one side of you have your Mark 19 automatic grenade launcher on one side as far as your gunner. You have a crew of normally about 3 or 4, and your TL platoon is around 50 guys. And so your job is to help maneuver an infantry company from ship to shore to inlet, and then back to ship. All right, so it's straight up what I envision as the mission of the Marine Corps. Like everybody says the infantry is the tip of the spear. Well, I consider myself like the sheath of the spear because I was carrying that tip like right to the objective.
Hell yeah!
And like being an oceanography major, which a lot more difficult than people think it is, but being an oceanography major and like having that animal background and loving nature and all that stuff, that's why I did it. That was my why. It was like, what do you want to do? It's like, well, I want to be next to the ocean. I want to be in my own Marines. I want to do something that I think is badass as hell. And I want to actually be active, and I want to move. I want to shoot, move, and I want to communicate. And I want to do that with a group of guys too, and girls too. No discrimination. And so like, yeah, right. Throw that in there. But I wanted to do something that I thought was impactful, and I didn't know, like, obviously we're not hitting beaches like we used to, I think that type of warfare has definitely gone down the drain. But it was something that I really wanted because I knew that I was going to be close to people. I knew that it was more than just like boots on the ground. It was like a highly technical vehicle that you have to learn the ins and outs of, and then take that, multiply it by 14, add weapon systems, and add 14 Marines up and down the scale from guys that are older to you to guys that are all like 18. That sounds awesome. That sounds so cool. Why would you not want to try to push yourself to be in command of something like that? As a 23-year-old dude, like a 25-year-old.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. And yeah, I don't know. I wonder if there will be some people listening who might take umbrage with your saying that style of warfare has gone down the drain. You never know. And I would love to see all warfare go down the drain. As a peace-loving, veteran myself, but man, that is definitely the best pitch for AAVs I've ever heard, and it is a badass group of dudes and gals as well. So, real quick before we get to your time at 8th and I, give us one example of either a junior Marine NCO or staff NCO or officer in your time as a junior officer that made an impact on you from a leadership perspective before you hopped off to 8th and I.
I'll do one. I'll do a sad one. I'll do a sad one for you because this one impacted me as a leader way more than like, hey, we got this guy, we did this thing with him, and he accomplished his task. I had a sad one. So with an AAV platoon, there's one platoon out of 2nd Mardiv on the East Coast of Camp Lejeune that deploys a year, for a Marine Expeditionary Unit. And I was slated from the time I got there from AAV school, to go on the 26th of you. I felt really happy about it. Was very lucky to do it. And so with that, they are stacking my platoon. They're making sure I had good vehicles. They're getting me through training. Like I'm still going through all the workups to be able to be a deployable platoon before we even attach into the infantry. They spent a lot of time grooming me to make sure I was a good Marine, and we're a good Marine officer at that. My sad story, or my story that really shaped me as a leader, was I had this one Marine, which will go unnamed, and he was on the heavier side, young African-American male. And I resonated with him because obviously, look at me, and sorry. But I resonated with him because I felt him. He came from struggle. He had like certain things about him where it's like, dude, I can see how this is affecting you, and he was overweight. He had over $30,000 in credit card debt, and he had a bank account of negative $50. Okay. So what I do every single day, I would PT with him during lunchtime individually. And I was, hey man, like you gotta lose some weight, and PT with him during lunchtime every single day. And then slowly my NCOs caught on. They're like, hey, like this is kind of our responsibility too. All right. So we did that. And then it was probably maybe a month or two before deploying, we had to make the cuts to our platoon because they beefed us up. But we was like, okay, like take a little bit back. You can only TO with these amount of people. Who do you want to take? And going on deployment would have put him in a better financial state. Going on deployment would have made sure that he had diet and exercise throughout the entire time frame. We were watching him, eyes on 24/7. Going on deployment would have changed his life for the better. But the Marine Corps isn't a charity case. I had to choose somebody that had done right, that had their finances in order, that I didn't have to worry about back home, that was fitting PT scores. I had plenty of guys that were doing that. And I had to say to myself, do I change this guy's life? Or do I make sure the mission gets accomplished by taking somebody that checks every single box and has earned a spot to be there? It was literally like a situation that I was in. This guy's checking the boxes. And I took the guy that was checking boxes because I knew he could get the job done, and I knew I didn't have to worry about him. Which is sad because it ended up, went back, I looked back, guy ended up getting kicked out of the Marine Corps for drugs. He's working at McDonald's and all those different things. But as a leader, you have to realize mission comes first. And you love the hell out of your Marines. You really do. You take ownership. It physically hurts you when you feel like somebody's not being done right by, and you see that people are struggling, or you see like problems at home, and it physically hurts you because it's like, I want to grab you by the collar and I want to take you and I want to, let's go, like let's get it right. But you can't do that all the time because people have to do that for themselves. And that's one thing you have to learn as a Marine Corps officer. It's like, you can try as best you can, but if they aren't doing it for themselves, you have to go with the mission.
Yeah, man, that is, I empathize with you immensely. The love that you pour into these young men and women, and how that you saw how it could be a benefit to his situation, but then ultimately having to go with mission first. I think that the Marine Corps does an excellent job with educating junior officers at the basic school with the simple idea that you have two sacred duties as an officer. One is mission effectiveness, period. The job needs to get done. That is number one. It's close, but that is decidedly and clearly number one, mission execution. And that means training your Marines so that they're ready for war. Heaven forbid they ever get called to war, but there are all types of crazy things that happen all the time that Marines have to respond to. That's your sacred duty. Train your Marines to be ready for war, ready for the mission, mission accomplishment. And then number two is improve the men and women under your care to return them to society as better, more capable citizens having been in the Marine Corps. And that's not talked about a lot. And that is specifically stated in your time at the basic school. And I think it is a deeply powerful message. And that's why I think a lot of people don't, they try to understand what's special about the Marines. That is one of the things. It's an officer's sacred duty to train his men and women for war and to return his or her men and women as better, more capable citizens who contribute to the American way of life after they leave the service. And so when those two things are in discord, it is a very challenging moment for a leader because you feel those two sacred calls and you have to forsake one of them in very rare circumstances, but sometimes it does have to happen. And, it's mission first, because at the end of the day, as much as you want to give to that one Marine, it's that, there are a lot of other Marines. And when you're going forward, obviously, you need to have a strong team. So that is a phenomenal example of some of the hardest challenges of being a Marine officer. And you made me think of my old master guns who accused me of loving the Marines too much. But it's a fact of life when you pour all your effort and love into these young men and women. You want to see them succeed. So thank you for sharing that. Now we talked about your time driving AAVs with the boys and girls, and at three, not exactly super fast through the water, but hey, you were driving them.
You get there eventually.
You get there eventually. And so now I want to transition real quick to your experience as a White House Social Aide and your time with the Silent Drill Team. Can you talk real quick, maybe just a quick breakdown of those two roles? What is the Silent Drill Team, and what were you doing at the White House?
Yeah, man. So Silent Drill Team is a precision drill exhibition conducted by one single platoon in the Marine Corps. It's the base of the Marine Corps in a sense, where you're traveling out and you do ceremonies, you shows for a multitude of different things. You're performing for presidents. You're doing NFL halftime shows. You're doing graduation of the Naval Academy. One special one that I did was even performing for the Cherokee Indians, and their code talkers.
Wow.
It was really cool.
Holy
and
cow.
so what you are is that I want to call it propaganda, but you're a piece that show, hey, like, this is what we represent. This is who we are. The platoon motto for the Silent Drill Platoon is remember what you represent. One, it's a check-in feature to keep your ego in check because you're a part of the Marine Corps, but you represent that entirety of the Marine Corps by perfecting your craft, by going through and saying every single boop, every single sink is done, and it's all done without any verbal command. The only verbal command that is done for the Silent Drill Platoon was myself as the platoon commander saying forward march, and that is it. And that is
Wow.
it. Everything else, the entire 14 to 20 minute drill exhibition. And you think about that's a long time. I mean, that's a long time of not talking and just knowing movements by heart and just watching and keeping that professionalism forward,
That's a great explanation of it. And for anyone who hasn't seen it, this will sound very dramatic, but when you watch this team do their thing, the silent drill, like it's inexplicable. It is like a very moving experience to watch it. It's super intense. It's super impressive. It's completely silent. And they represent everything that Isaac just described, but it's almost like impossible to understand it until you see it and how powerful it is as a demonstration of discipline, of hard work, and like complete coordination. It's one of the most impressive things you'll ever see. And I'll just point out, because obviously Isaac is a very humble guy, that's like a one of one. Like they take like one officer to do that every year, and you have to be super disciplined and you have to look really good in uniform, which was so two things that Isaac was accused of in his time in the Marines. But yeah, go on. You've got your time at the White House as well.
And it was somewhat similar. I'll be honest with you. The White House was kind of like one of those ancillary roles. While you're at 8th and 9, you have a platoon, you know, the entire time. You have a job with the Marine Corps. The White House was an ancillary role that which is selected for. Going to 8th and 9, 6 foot tall, great PT scores, military, you know, fortitude, and then you have to look good in uniform as well. And that's who they take. You don't have to interview for the White House if you're at 8th and 9. If you're a Marine officer at 8th and 9 and you're single at that time frame, you're going over and you're becoming a part of, you know, the White House Social Aide program. Because they're like, oh, you're 6 feet tall, you're propaganda piece. Get over here.
So that's good.
There.
That's good to know. I knew about the other requirements, you know, being sharp, being squared away in uniform, being motivated. I didn't know you had to be 6 feet tall. So that must have been why they never called me. Because I'm only, you know, I'm 5'10", 5'11" at best. But that must have been the only reason why they never gave me a call.
I think, honestly, you were slated and they were like, he's like 1 inch off. That's it. We're going to put some pumps in the heels, you know?
Yeah.
Get you right over there.
I never knew. But yeah, can you tell us I mean, basically, if you've seen people at the White House and there's always like a sharp Marine, you know, either escorting people around with different dignitaries, that kind of thing. That's what Isaac was doing. Could you give us one or two, like, do you have any funny stories that you're allowed to share from your time?
Yeah. So I have a couple for you. I'll share the few that are good. So one, there's Easter egg roll every single year that the president does. You're highly involved in that. You're doing everything from escorting, flow of events, talking to guests. You're more or less somebody that's helping liaison the party that's happening. So that, you know, you're either stationed in a room, you may be stationed at the coat check. You know, there's so many different jobs you can have. One of my jobs was to just make sure that a certain celebrity was taken care of that day. And it was Jimmy Fallon. So I'm sitting there and Jimmy Fallon's is like getting, you know, I'm just kind of behind him. He's talking, he's doing his thing. You're not supposed to interact. Just kind of make sure he's good. And then he goes, hey man, this is a lot. Is there anywhere we can go? And I just need to like sit for a sec and like just get away from the crowd. And I was like, yeah, sure. So me and Jimmy Fallon go into the green room and we just like, we both sit back. We kind of relax. I'm not supposed to be sitting down, but I am. And we just kind of shoot the shit for a little bit. We're just talking about life. And it's like, and you good, man? It's like, yeah, man, it's just a lot. And Jimmy Fallon vented to me. And so that was one story. Another story is, everybody knows who Sierra is. Let me see your 1-2 step.
Of course.
Yeah. She is beautiful in person. She's absolutely drop dead gorgeous. It's like she walks and everything's like slow motion. Her hair's moving and everything. She's like glowing. You're like, holy crap. You're real? Her husband, Russell Wilson, I had met him once while doing an NFL halftime show. I think it was Broncos versus Seahawks. He was playing for Seahawks. It was Seahawks versus Vikings, and I was doing a Vikings halftime show. So I met him, interacted with him, and then I see him again, and I kind of look at him. He kind of looks at me. He's like, are you that? And I was like, yeah, nice to see you again. So I interacted with him. All the while, they're getting they're getting photos with the president, Joe Biden at the time, and I'm like helping facilitate their kids and like move their kids into place and like try not to stare at Sierra too much, but also interacting with Russell, you know.
That is hilarious. And yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine all the different things you saw in that role. And just, it is, dude, it's intense, but I mean, you were well prepared, right? Like all the work you had done up to that point to make sure that you were squared away in uniform, understood how to, you know, have that presence in front of crowds, in front of groups, from all that work that you had done, even in your time just driving AAVs, and then ultimately with the silent drill team, the poise, the discipline, that level of that level of presence, which can be, you know, which is required in those scenarios when you're representing an organization, and certainly when you're wearing the blues, you know, and you're representing the Marine Corps. So we talked, those are fantastic stories from the White House. And ultimately you ended up transitioning out of the Marine Corps. And can you give us a quick breakdown? What was that like for you, and what was that decision-making process?
Yeah. So transitioning out of the Marine Corps wasn't necessarily the hardest thing initially at all. You kind of just like, where I was, everybody was such a high performer. Everybody was doing so well. People were going off and they're getting these GS-15 jobs. Some people are going to go work for 3-letter agencies. Some people are going to med tech side and they're making a bunch of money and all that stuff. And you're just like, what do I want to do? I kind of have to rise to the occasion. I got very lucky because I was able to I got headhunted by basically this company called Alliance Careers, which helps transition military officers over to, and they pretty much set you up for interviews and all that stuff. But that transition going from military to civilian wasn't hard because I'd gone through a lot during that time frame. I had a broken relationship and I had lost a Marine. So my focus was on like making sure that I moved forward and making sure that I showed the rest of the world that I could do it, you know? So my effort was into making sure I was taken care of as a human and then making sure that I had a job because there was nothing else I had to necessarily worry about. I could go anywhere in the world. I could go anywhere in the country. Literally, I had like a golden ticket to, hey, fresh start of life. Luckily, I paired with Johnson & Johnson MedTech and worked for them for 3 years. And it was great. It was incredibly lucrative. I feel like I fit in really well to that environment. You know, I wasn't sitting behind a desk, which is something that me personally, I couldn't do. But then life started to hit, you know, parents start to get sick, you know, and then you start to realize, hey, like this job is really cool and I love it a lot. But at the same time, this is like really weird to say out loud, but like I was a single guy and like I didn't necessarily enjoy getting hit on by people, you know. It was like hey, like I'm here for a job and I'm not here to like form a relationship with anybody that I'm working with. And so, and my parents, them getting sick was a big driving factor. It was like, what is my life actually about? What am I here for? What do I care about? And I looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, I care about making sure that I see that if my dad is going through something, if he's got cancer, then I'm there to help him ring the cancer bell. And I'm there to drive him to a Plymouth and I'm there to support that I can see them and say like, I saw and I watched you get older and I was there for you. When you fell down, I was there to pick you up. And I wasn't able to do that because I was so focused on myself because I had been for so long because I was given that golden ticket to say you can do whatever you want anywhere you want to do it. That's actually one of the reasons why I moved back to the South and why I'm in Charleston, South Carolina with JD right now too.
You talked about why you made that transition away. But if you are looking at your life now and you're looking at like what are the principles that are driving you forward now, what are some of those things that you think are important to help find that purpose? You were in the Marine Corps for a long time. You were at the Academy for a long time. You know, you had this drive, this larger purpose, and you know, I'm sure it's important to have that same level of purpose for a lot of people. What are you doing to find that today?
I think there's a lot of things. I think you have to know who you are a lot more, you know, because everybody has this, I don't know, image of grandeur where you're sitting and you're saying, I need this car, I need this house, I need this job, and this comparison syndrome that hits you, especially once you get out of the military. And I think that's one of the things that's hard is because you don't realize it's going to hit you because you had such structure in your life. You knew the next rank you were going to hit. You knew the billets you could take. But now it's like choose your own adventure every single day out here. You know, what I do for my job is I'm a mortgage lending officer now. I work for a company called Evolution Mortgage. And not to like dive into another story, but when I was getting ready to transition, before I thought about doing all this stuff, I was like, hey, like, I'm going to go off and I'm just going to live in Thailand for a couple of years, decompress. And then all the family stuff started hitting and I kind of had this realization. And JD, God bless him, he goes, hey, Isaac, I could use some help over here. Also, I think you'd be really good at this. Why don't you come over and why don't you work for me? Why don't you work for this company called Evolution Mortgage? We're starting it up. It's all Service Academy, all like operated and owned, like the founders of Service Academy. And then on top of that, everybody that works for it's part of the military. So it's like, okay, cool. And what are we going to do? It's like, well, you're going to be a lender. You're going to pay a mortgage loan. I was like, what the hell is that? You know, what do I do for that job? But it's been incredibly fulfilling because now majority of what I do is VA loans, you know? And I get to work with military families, get to get them into homes, educate them, talk to them. And I get to do from all the comfort of my home, which leads me into your original question is what's your purpose? You know, what do you do it for? I do it for my life now. I do it for others' lives. I know I didn't want to work behind a desk. I know that I just can't serve and be in a place where I'm constantly having to focus on everything else except for my life. You know, I think once you get to that point where realize you need to focus on your happiness in your life and what brings you happiness, brings me happiness is this 90-pound Doberman sitting behind me, going going to the beach and surfing, you know, eating good food, staying healthy, staying in shape, being there for the people I care about, having good relationships with people. Those are the things that actually make me happy now. And like being active in my community, making sure that I actually have some roots and I'm not just this tumbleweed that passes around from place to place that anybody can have access to. I want to be my own person that nobody else has access to unless I give them that access, and also be a good person as well, so that those interactions I have with people are fulfilling for me too. It's like, oh, that person's a bad person. Well, hey, I don't have to work with them. I don't have to be a part of their life. I get to be exactly who I want to be, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely. And dude, that is such a great distillation of something that when I was, thinking about a lot of what you said earlier, about transitions. And I think, we've talked a lot about transition for veterans on this show. And, your sharing that is huge. But you transitioned out of another career, right? So you've done two of these things, and like from the Marines to Johnson & Johnson's, and from there, now you're lending. I think one thing that I've been reflecting on a lot over the past year with a lot of my classmates at Wharton has been, veterans, of course, have this tremendous transition that they have to work through, and it's very arduous. And it's so hard to step away from the team and the mission and the purpose and the fact that every single day, when you put your uniform on, you never question like what I'm doing doesn't matter. It's like, that even if you're doing stuff that feels like it doesn't matter, you're training, you're ready, you're ready to answer the call. I will say one quick aside. Memorial Day this year was way harder for me than I ever expected. I every year I took that as a very somber, solemn day to pay respects to the men and women who have given the ultimate sacrifice to our country. Being out of uniform for the first time in my adult life I was shocked at how emotionally challenging that was for me. And I think part of it is the part of my identity that was associated with being a Marine officer and being ready. Thank God I never had to make a sacrifice like that, but the fact that you were standing ready to answer the call, and now on the other side of that, no longer being in a position to do that, made it very challenging for me. So this is a very long way of saying veterans have this experience where they transition, but it's not just veterans. It's anyone who has ascribed a huge portion of their identity to their work, or to the other things in their lives. There are a lot of people who do that, right? Like the people who work incredibly hard in investment banking, management consultants, small business owners, really anyone, right? Like teachers, who they put so much value and so much of their identity into their work. And then when they go to transition and step away from that, it's a challenging thing to lose. It's, there's a sense of loss to that change of your, that part of your identity. So if you had a piece of advice for folks, now you've done it twice, you had a piece of advice for folks to help them navigate that transition, what would it be?
Well, that's a great question, Bubba. It really is. Focus on you. Focus on what makes you happy. Because for so long, especially in the service, you mission first. I'll be here. I'll wake up at 4 a.m. I'll get up at 2 a.m. Hell, I work all night long. I will go home for, 8 months out of the year. And then that's kind of taken away. And you're sitting there saying, okay, I still need to devote it to somebody. And you touch on something Memorial Day, and it was just like, you feel that like I'm not in uniform. I should be doing something. Somebody's about to answer the call. But what's giving me peace is focusing on me, focusing on my health, focusing on my family, focusing on the things that actually make me happy. Because you're so happy because you have this purpose, and it's bigger, it's greater than self. And that greater than self purpose will drive you to do anything. You can run through a brick wall with that when you have something else to live for. But then when you take that away, and it's like, well, now I don't work a 9 to 5. I technically work 24/7 because you get after calls, texts, or anything like that. But like, it's different when it's about you. It's different when you feel yourself and you get a chance to take your foot off the gas for a second. And you're like, whoa, 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 who is Isaac again? All right, where's that nature boy? How about we go look at some animals, That has been my purpose recently, is to just be me, which by extension, because of the tenets that the Marine Corps instill, it's going to be somebody that's going to still take care of people,
Yeah.
It's going to be somebody that still has drive and purpose and wants to get things done. And if there's a problem, you figure out how to solve it, And you think about the loyalty you had to people, your relationships to people, and it's like, I don't want to be a bad person. That's not what I represent. What I still am is I'm still an American, you know, I'm still a Marine, you know, I'm still all those things, but I can still do it in the little microcosm environment that I have right here.
Yeah. Dude, that is fantastic. And as someone who's navigating my own transition, that's very valuable to me. And it's echoed by some of my good friends who are also veterans going through the same thing. I think of my buddy Andy Yim, who told me the same thing. You know, seek that which brings you joy, and you will, you know, engage all those other tenets, all those other skills that you have, and ultimately find success and purpose. So we are at time, but I have to ask you the same question I ask everybody before they leave. I know I just asked you for some advice, but it was transition centric. Mm-hmm. Now I'm going to ask you, if there were one trait that you could ask a young aspiring leader to work on, what would it be?
Oh man, it's hard to form that into a single word. I think the trait that I would have is bring who you are to the table. You know, a lot of times we all try to be professional, or we try to like go to the sides, like, you know, but I think one of the strengths that you have as an individual, one of the reasons you were picked to either go to the Naval Academy or be an officer or be a Marine, is because of who you are. So don't forget to bring that personal side to the table as well, because you're always going to have the professional, and you always be judged on that professional. So don't forget to bring who you are, because that's what makes you special, and that's what makes that piece of the puzzle fit into it.
Dude, fantastic advice. You can't have one without the other, right? I remember we once upon a time talked about this. If you're all charisma, all yourself, all joy, that's not necessarily going to work in every context, right? If you're all if you're all professionalism all the time, devoid of the things that make you, you're never going to connect with the people you're in charge of, and you're never going to be successful. That is fantastic advice. Mr. Isaac Seals, Marine veteran, absolute Naval Academy legend, and a joy to have on the show. Thank you so much for coming.
Brother, this has been great for me as well. I really appreciate you having me on, Bubba.
Absolutely. We'll see you next time.
Yes, sir.
Thanks so much for listening to Lead with Bubba Scott, brought to you by the VA Lender. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow the show and leave a rating or review wherever you find your podcasts. You can also follow along on Instagram at Lead with Bubba and let us know your thoughts on the episode. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.